Welcome back into Wave Listens Live. I'm Michael Vanover, joined now by a familiar face of the show, Jim Desmond, attorney Jim Desmond from Desmond Law Office. Jim, welcome in.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. So, we tend to talk a lot of times around holidays and different things. People are doing a lot of going out to dinner for Valentine's and maybe having a little bit of the red wine or cocktails this evening. They need to be careful on the roads, but you are there for people when they are in an automotive accident, whether alcohol, of course, is involved or not. Talk about the process. When people call you, they're obviously distraught. They're going through, in some cases, pain or trouble with their vehicle, of course. When they call you, they get directly to the source, right? How important is that to your clients?
It's very, well, I mean, because again, from day one, you know, it's funny, I see all these people advertising these days. They're finally saying, okay, you can reach me on the weekends, you can reach so-and-so. I've had my cell phone on the web for 20 plus years, okay? And the idea is, again, that, you know, if you have been in a car wreck, you don't know what to do. God willing, you have 1, 2, maybe 3 your whole life. You don't know what to do. You hear all these stories from other people saying, hey, do this or that. The idea with the cell phone is very simple, that you're going to reach me directly because I'm an attorney. I'm not going to have you talk to a paralegal. I'm not going to have you talk to a case manager, somebody, you know, who doesn't know what they're doing. Because, again, I see all the time, there's so much misinformation out there about car wrecks. You know, the insurance companies alone, if you, I'm not anti-insurance, but if you talk to them and you're not an attorney, you get the least experienced adjuster. And again, are they giving you good advice or not? I don't know. You know, that's why I want the clients to deal with me directly, and they deal with it not just from the first phone call, the whole case. They have my cell phone.
Well, and I know you always get those phone calls, and you always take those phone calls, as you say. When you get somebody reaching out to you for the first time that maybe was recently in an accident, what are some of the most common questions that you get, and how do you direct them, you know, whether they have a case or not, or if you would take the case? They seem very confused. How do you walk them through that process?
First question is find out when the accident was, because again, if it's gone too long, sometimes it can be an issue. Legally, it's called the statute of limitations. We all have 2 years from the date of accident in Kentucky to file a lawsuit. Practically, you want to be going to, assuming you're hurt. If you're not hurt, that's fine. But if you're hurt, you want to get treatment pretty much right off the bat. You have to kind of establish the fact that you are hurt. You're establishing your story to tell down the road, whether it's to an insurance company or to a jury. The first phone calls, many times, what we talk about is, you know, how did the accident happen? Because that's one thing is, you know, they're being told, I mean, no one thinks they're at fault for their own accident, okay? But if somebody calls me and they are at fault, I'm happy to still give them advice, and we can talk about, you know, how did it happen? Because I don't want them to waste a lot of time and energy if we can't prove our case against the other party. On that issue, I'll tell you, one of the biggest things and one of the best things I think when I've taught my kids how to drive and other people, and when I talk to clients, you always drive with, you know, who has the right-of-way. Because that's, again, many times that first phone call, they're telling me, they're giving me a description of the accident. My first question is, who has the right-of-way? They'll be pulling out, somebody will be pulling out from a parking lot, and they'll say the other guy was speeding. Well, that speeding is a very small percentage of fault. The big issue is that you, as you know, you're pulling out under a roadway, you have the duty to yield the right-of-way. So those are kind of things that kind of come into play that we have to kind of talk about. Because again, I don't want my clients to, I don't want somebody to waste 6 months or a year on litigation or anything else and not be able to get somewhere with it.
You know, you talk about myths and things that are out there. There's a myth that sometimes if it's the other person's fault that you don't owe anything and all. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think it's very confusing for people that, again, they're in a moment of crisis.
Right. Well, the first thing is, okay, the other person, you have to show fault in the other person. Okay, if you want to go to legal terms, it's negligence, duty, breach of duty, causation, damages. If you can't show that fault, you can't recover. But okay, God forbid I'm driving home today and I get hit in the rear end by a drunk driver while I'm standing still at a light. Clearly that guy's at fault. That company, the drunk driver's insurance company, still is not going to pay my medical bills as they go. So I'm going to have to use my clients, well in my case I would use my own health insurance to pay some of my medical bills, because again, I don't want them to go to collection. I want to be able to get treatment. I'd use what we call no-fault insurance in Kentucky. No fault refers to the fact that the easiest way to simplify that is think of health insurance automatically through your automobile if the accident happens in Kentucky up to $10,000, okay? And we have to use that. Everybody says, well, it's not my fault. Why do I have to use it? You have to use it because of the fact that the law said in exchange for that right, we gave up the right to recover the first $10,000 in bills.
Okay.
So, but again, I mean, that goes to the issue of, you know, one of the first things and the most important things, how do you get a client treated? Because, you know, the people that call me, they're not, you know, if they're injured, they're not sitting here saying, I mean, I can tell they're not feeling well and it's affecting the job and everything else. So that's one of the biggest things, is how do we get some treatment going and how do we make sure we get it paid for?
Well, and I think too, you know, we've talked about this on the show before, but a lot of people, they think, maybe I don't have a case, or that happened a year and a half ago. That's not always, they need to call you and find out. You're willing to walk them through that, whether they become a client or not, and I think that's very important. Would you agree?
Yeah, because again, I mean, no offense, this is all I do. I mean, I limit my practice to car wrecks. And again, you don't know. I mean, it's a complicated area of the law that involves everything from insurance contracts to what we call tort law, you know, on down. So again, people should not judge for themselves whether they have a case, whether it's worth pursuing. You know, and I don't mind taking a 10 or 15-minute phone call. I've done that over the years. I save the person's number. They call me back 6 months from now and we talk about something else. It's, you know, that's just a courtesy.
Sure.
So.
Now, I know you said you're not anti-insurance, of course, but would you agree that sometimes if somebody's calling and speaking to the insurance company directly, that they may be confused because they're using different terms or laws or things that they're just not, they don't operate in that space every day?
There's a lot of good insurance adjusters out there, but again, you got to look at the insurance adjuster and say, what's his workload? You know, as I understand it, the average insurance adjuster probably has about 400 to 500 files. So again, they don't have the time to take and say, spend every little bit and tell you everything, and also they can't practice law. So I mean, drunk driver case, I just gave you the example. Let's say they offered the insurance coverage, the policy limits. Okay, if I wasn't an attorney, that insurance adjuster can't say, I'm offering you policy limits, and go back and talk to your own insurance company about underinsured coverage because you can recover more. All they could do is say, we're offering our limits. You follow me?
Right.
So yeah, they're very limited on that, and you got to jump through the hoops. Car damage, I'll just say that real quick with the insurance companies. A lot of phone calls sometimes are, the person says my car is worth more, and I'm like, you got to document that. You got to give this insurance adjuster something to put in his file, because again, he's got to report to his supervisor, and even there, 6 months, a year later, 3 years later, they can still be audited by their own internal process.
So obviously, to the average person that might be watching right now, they care, of course, about their health, their personal equipment, or their car, automotive bill, whatever. But they also care about how much it's going to cost them, right? They care about their pocketbook. Talk about your fees, how that works. What do people owe you money right away? Can you kind of take us through that process a little bit?
Any good personal injury attorney in town should charge a contingency fee. Okay, contingency fee means you don't owe us anything unless we recover something. So no, when they call me, when I sign them up, when I get 6 months into it, it doesn't matter. If I don't recover anything, they owe me nothing. Okay, and that's a process that we've done for years. I know another TV firm starting to advertise. They do that all the time. It's like we've done that for years. Okay, and any good personal injury attorney should do that, because again, if you're in a car wreck, and I mean you don't want to be incurring legal fees that you don't know whether or not you're actually going to be able to recover, because we don't. Okay, we don't know. Sometimes I mean that you can go all the way to a jury, you can put it on a good case, and for whatever reason the jury doesn't award a pain and suffering claim.
And something you've told me before, Jim, is not only your fees are less than maybe the average, and then also you don't like to brag about it, but you also have won a lot in your career. Is that safe to say?
I've got a good track record because I've been doing this 20 years on my own.
And only focusing on this area?
Only on car wrecks. Since 05 was when I left Gary Becker's office, and that's all I've done is basically car wrecks since. So yeah, I've had a good track record with that. The fee issue that I think other attorneys should do, and I do, is that I have a written policy that I won't take more as an attorney's fee than the client will as a net settlement. So you have a case where your medical bills don't get paid by health insurance, so they eat up a lot of your settlement, and the client's supposed to put $5 grand in their pocket, and my fee's supposed to be $6. I'm going to lower my fee so they make more money than I do.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good to know. That's good to know. If you need Attorney Jim Desmond, make sure you give him a call. The number on the screen is his cell phone, has been for years, 502-609-7657, or you can always visit them at attorneydesmond.com. Jim, thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.